Introducing Meta Ray-Ban Display, the world's most advanced AI glasses. With a full color display built into the lens of the glasses, it's there when you need it and gone when you don't. Send and receive messages, translate or caption live conversations, collaborate with Meta AI, and more. Be one of the first to try Meta Ray-Ban Display. Visit meta.com/Meta Ray-Ban Display to book a demo and find your pair.
You are tuned in to the FowlWeather Podcast, the forecast to your next successful hunt. Coming to you from the home office, Jack's Reef, New York.
Ducks don't sit still, and neither should you. Do you need to chase them to the ends of the earth? Goodness, no. But when the time is right, strike and do it with strategy. Do it with precision. Do it the FowlWeather Podcast way. Hunt the ducks hot from the north. But also sit some days out, because fighting every day makes no sense. Fight when the fight is right. All that, your migration forecast, comments on hunting success or not, public lands biologist apathy for duck hunting, the Northeast drought continues, the corn comment continues, all that today on your mixed bag and more today on the FowlWeather Podcast. A quick reminder to rate, follow, like, and share the FowlWeather Podcast to get all the latest updates and our exclusive duck migration forecast each Monday morning throughout season, plus all of our informative content throughout the year. Be the guy with the real information about the ducks and where the ducks are at. I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. We thank our every week listeners. You know who you are. Those that never miss a single migration forecast episode each Monday morning. Y'all are as ate up as me about ducks, duck biology, and duck migration. You know where the ducks are at before the ducks know where they're at. Think about that. You know where the ducks are at before the ducks even know where they are at. Our dedicated weekly listeners can pick the best days to hunt because the FowlWeather Podcast forecasts fresh ducks hot from the north. Shoot the ducks from the north before they know where they're at. I'm your host, Dr. Mike, coming to you from the home office in Jack's Reef. Well, it happened. A duck opener came and went in Jack's Reef country, and my wife and I did not go. You heard me. We did not go duck hunting yesterday. I've expressed this a bunch. We are nearly 100% public hunters when it comes to duck hunting, and with the historic dry, scouting that turned up lots of duck food growing on the edges of wetlands but few ducks, and a pile of folks lined up the day before, it just wasn't worth the fight. Young me would have been able to get a spot at 3 a.m. and have something decent in the past. Maybe a group would edge in about 30 minutes before shooting light, but nowadays in Jack's Reef country, you have to be at the wetland by noon the day before to hold your spot. And then nowadays, 3 groups will still edge in on you about 30 minutes before shooting light. So again, just not worth the frustration. So we went deer hunting instead and at least tipped over a nice 8-point. Nothing fancy, but DBD, decent buck down, not big buck down, not BBD, but DBD, decent buck down. So it was not all a loss. We are, however, nearly 8 inches behind on rain. So what this means is we need 8 inches of rain to break our local drought. And that ain't likely happening anytime soon without a substantial tropical system, which probably isn't happening either because every hurricane this year, although it was a fairly active season, they all just ran out into the Atlantic Ocean. So it's going to be fighting the crowds. You know, many folks are going to hopefully give up, and this feeds into the idea that lots of us are unsuccessful at duck hunting most of the time. Or thought of another way, not everyone is getting pile picks every day. It's way less common than the internet shows, and we should be, okay with that as part of duck country. But I'll mostly leave that for a bit later in the episode when we talk about declining numbers of hunters but busier places. So we sat this one out because fighting for it every day just doesn't make sense. Anyhow, what else happened this week? A bow hunting tip, or I guess any type of deer hunting tip if you're using a climber or ladder stand and rope up and down your bow or crossbow or your gun. When you finish the hunt in the morning, it might be a good thing to leave the rope tied to your stand and not let it all drop to the ground before starting to climb down. The other day, kind of a strong south wind in a stand in the corner of an alfalfa field. It's a place where deer kind of visit and eat dropping red oak acorns from a few really big trees. I was kind of surprised nothing had moved with the wind and acorns were bopping the ground. So I guess as I was getting down for the morning, I did just that. I went to get down about 8:30 with work I had to do at the farm, lowered my bow down, and then just dropped the rope on top of it. Not even hooked to the stand anymore, just dropped it to the ground, figure I'm getting down, no big deal. I look up while I'm undoing my harness from the tree, and here comes a flat top, a doe, a freezer queen, whatever you like to call them. And she's coming right for the oak tree. She came out of the swell the other way and was coming up over the little hill. She was still a ways off. I easily could have pulled my bow back up, notched an arrow, and would have been BDD, big doe down, right? But nope. I was stuck watching her at 10 to 20 yards for about 20 minutes crunching acorns. So lesson learned and tip of the day, kids. Don't drop the line as well. Glad it wasn't a booner, though. I mean, that would have stung a bit more. But we do shoot does, largely because we have a crazy number of deer around at the farm, and they eat the woods out of house or home. It's hard to find an oak seedling. They just never get that big, mostly from kind of spring doe browse when they really need that nutrition. But our buck to doe ratio is also way out of whack. I'll see, the other night I saw 3 bucks in an evening sit, but saw 15 does and fawns. So our biggest problem is that these does I think they're tougher to kill than these bucks half the time. And I mean, a 1.5 year old buck is about the easiest thing to kill out there. We obviously try to give those dudes a pass and wait till they're 2.5, 3.5. And man, it'd be nice to see a 4.5-year-old big boy out there. But those does and their fawns just hang out in nooks and crannies. Lots of places behind houses, and once guns get going, they're really kind of hard to find. So we even take doe fawns in bow season because it isn't hurting the herd. If anything, it helps that doe to buck ratio. They also taste great, and in years when the freezer gets thin, something about tipping over a yearling kind of blows off the dust and gets that freezer starting to get back full. I mean, it's not a ton of meat, but it's damn good meat. But hey, this is a duck podcast, right? So sorry, but don't worry. The dogs are more pissed at me than you about the lack of bird hunting. Pheasants open soon, and we always have the grouse woods to the north to pound feet and get them a good run. So anyhow, we'll be back at the birds here soon enough. Probably be out after the ducks sometime during the week when the crowds slim down. Birds will be scarcer, but the crowds will be slimmer too. So anyhow, hey, grab your Beckman by FowlWeather Podcast limited edition Edison duck call today. They're going fast, so get the last few. Up next, words on good duck hunters, and we can't all be successful, so please stick with me. Beckman Game Calls has it dialed in. If you want a duck call that is adjustable to your air pressure and sounds like a duck, this is it. I've blown a ton of different calls in my life, but this one is the real deal. Look, we don't endorse just anything. We are only going to put forward a call that works. The Edison by Chris Beckman of Beckman Game Calls. Yeah, this beauty sounds like a duck. I only know of one published research paper focused on what makes a duck call sound like a duck. Go look me up and you will see that colleagues and I have the only paper published in scientific literature about what makes a duck call sound like a duck. For sure, Chris Beckman did his homework and this call sounds like a duck. This guy knows how to make a duck call, period. But don't just take my word for it. Here's the proof. First, a hen recording, and then the Edison in the big woods of Arkansas. Visit them today at BeckmanGameCalls.com. Good duck hunters are good at what they do because they have chosen discipline over chaos and calamity. They view the landscape given to them, the weather that is happening at them to the north, and they make calculated decisions. They do not wake up with hate for the ducks. They do not post photos that is just killing about ducks, and they don't just drive boats into vast nothingness of no ducks. They learn and they listen. They listen and they learn. They are true disciples of the ducks. The ducks speak to them in ways we wish we could all learn. You know these people. Some have money and shoot ducks. Others not so much, and they listen, find ducks, and shoot ducks. At the end of the day, it is a hope that your grand strap will not be measured in numbers of ducks and weight, but in finding a way to kill ducks like nobody else kills. The waters, woods, and fields of your life are a desperate place filled with boat lines, competition, poor infrastructure and duck management, and all that is not what makes duck hunting and duck hunting people great. But you will and must make duck country a great place to be and live. We in no way at the FowlWeather Podcast can change duck culture, but you can. Maybe nothing will be a metaphorical Pyrrho once again, and certainly all the implements are making it easier than ever to get to the ducks. But is it better? The pace is faster, the game more competitive, the camaraderie changed to within boat and not among boats. The ducks are scared into the last strongholds of safety, and the guns blaze. But is it better? And of course, those that have the finances to buy and manage their own land are doing so because they are escaping the long boat lines, the 2 a.m. alarm clock, the fights for duck holes, and the general chaos that duck hunting has invited upon itself. They are not to blame. You are for creating chaos out of something that is meant to be an enjoyable time in the marsh, in the woods, and on the rivers. So yeah, my wife and I didn't sleep in the marsh the other night, only to be invaded upon at 6 a.m. and yelled at by others, rained on by shot, sky busting abounds, and nobody understanding swing ducks. Those aren't your targets. Maybe starting to make duck hunting culture something enjoyable again is about learning when not to go. And here's the deal. A lot of folks are unsuccessful on duck hunts. Heck, some people are unsuccessful for the year if they only go a few times. First and foremost, thinking about the numbers, people must be hunting more because if numbers of duck hunters have declined by as much as noted, then how is it that your favorite marsh is busier than ever? It also seems that opportunities to hunt on private ground have decreased in a lot of places, which concentrates folks on remaining ground. But here's the deal. The FowlWeather Podcast team ran the numbers, and yeah, the number of duck hunters in the Mississippi Flyway has seen a significant decline from about 576,000 in 1999 to a low of 338,000 in 2022. Why are we using 1999 to 2022? The Harvest Information Program started in 1999, so that is the first reliable data point. Remember, before that, we used duck stamp sales to track numbers of duck hunters, but that doesn't work because other people or collectors of duck stamps also buy duck stamps, and some people buy more than one duck stamp for the quality conservation dollars they provide. So we had to move away from the duck stamps and now use the Harvest Information Program, or HIP numbers, which has been in place since 1999. We stop at 2022 because we've noted this in the podcast. In 2023, we saw a bump in numbers of hunters that is likely due to a change in methodology when they went to a more online system to increase government efficiency. But from 1999 to 2022, we had consistent data collection, and that is useful and reliable. What is crazy, though, is that year, the variable year, explains nearly all of the change in the number of duck hunters in the Mississippi Flyway. Actually, 91% of the variation in the number of duck hunters in the Mississippi Flyway can be explained by the variable year. So as year goes along, all the variation, or nearly all the variation in the decline, is explained by that variable. Now, habitat changes, increases in private ground, technology, and so on haven't changed consistently from one year to the next, so it seems that maybe something culturally, maybe something is happening with duck hunting. I don't know. Maybe that something is getting worse and worse every year, manifested by a generation that continues to take others and teach them that faster and more is better. And all we've done is consistently speed up duck hunting, which has likely moved people out of duck hunting culture. Okay, this could just be an aging out and not recruiting new duck hunters thing too, but no matter, it is a consistent decline and much stronger than seen in other flyways. Let's go to my home flyway, the Atlantic, what most people would consider the least of all flyways. The decline is barely, or might even be considered insignificant, only declining by 3% at most. And the decline in the Mississippi flyway is almost 30% in the numbers of hunters. Wow. And year for the Atlantic flyway only describes 16% of the variation in duck hunter numbers, so other factors are affecting the ups and downs among years across that time scale. The Central and Pacific flyway declines were significant at 22 and 28% decline in numbers of hunters respectively, and 35 and 17% of variation explained by year respectively. So something is going on in the Atlantic flyway that is retaining hunters. I don't know. It could be that our expectations are generally low and all the loss of places to hunt already happened. Not sure, but certainly the strongest trends in the decline in duck hunter numbers is in the Mississippi and Central flyways, which is concerning, given the need for support for the ducks from the Mississippi flyway folks that make up the bulk of duck hunters in the U.S. I don't know, maybe it's all about not having quality places to hunt anymore on public land. Up next, what is going on with our public lands for duck hunting? Why are they so poorly maintained and managed? A Dr. Mike rant coming at you, so please, stick with me. How many days have you had empty skies over the duck blind? Your property can be more with wildlife strategies. It is no secret that hiring a consultant, an expert in managing water, woods, and fields, an expert in duck food, an expert in hunting pressure management, hiring a consultant yields better habitat for the critters you chase. Less empty skies, more quality days of field, more smiles for miles with family and friends. If that's your game and goal, contact Ryan Delaney at ryan@farmlg.com for a site visit. Okay, and we are back. Way back in episode 10, Howling Winds and Howling Hunters, we noted the lack of care for duck hunters by public land managers. Well, that hasn't gone away. And I have one simple reason why it is happening. Biologists at National Wildlife Refuges, WMAs, and so on are decreasingly hunters. These positions continue to be filled by people who don't hunt and don't care about ducks. They care about things, they just don't care about ducks. It is a fact that waterfowl are taking second seat to focusing on threatened and endangered species, or at least non-game species. The rationale is that waterfowl are doing fine, so we need to focus on other species. Here's the problem. 1. Don't throw out the thing you know how to do, manage great habitat for ducks, geese, and swans, for something you aren't even sure you can manage well because you don't have enough science to support that non-game management. Number 2, many state agencies are now paying non-game biologists with Pittman-Robertson funds. Tax funds that come from the sale of firearms and ammunition meant to be spent on game species. And number 3, all the duck stamp and some of the PR funds, along with all the passionate conservationists, comes from having lands that are well managed enough to sustain waterfowl hunters. I, for one, and there's a bunch of us now, and it's growing, I'm getting pretty pissed that someone else came into my sandbox to play with my toys because their folks couldn't find a way to buy them their own toys. Said another way, the birding and non-game community can't get their you-know-what together enough to have dedicated conservation funds, so they come into our sandbox and steal our toys. If we are going to find a way to restore the migration and the distribution of ducks across this country, we need to have well-managed habitats from north to south. This is playing out at every level of agencies and needs to be called out. We are redirecting funds. Okay, there is some uncertainty if PR funds are specifically only earmarked for game species, but the truth is that the reason we've started diluting these funds is because philosophically we've changed as a community of biologists working on federal and state lands and need funding to play with for our pet species. But they don't have those funds, so they are dipping into PR funds, playing in our sandbox. To me, I never invited them into my sandbox, and I want them out. The defective infrastructure and lack of management for waterfowl on public lands is rampant, and a result of decades of not training hunter conservationists at the university level to fill positions to sustain ducks and duck habitat on public lands for the sake of the ducks and the sake of the duck hunters. So you are aware this degradation comes from within, and we need to continue to find ways to train waterfowl hunters to run waterfowl areas, not people who care more about piping plovers, black terns, and every other rare bat than they care about the mallard. All right, now here's the deal. I'm not saying we shouldn't care about biodiversity and all the cool critters out there. Heck, I teach ornithology in a conservation biology course called Conservation and Management of Wetlands for Wildlife, which is aimed at saving all wetland-dependent species. But as a hunter, get out of my sandbox and go find your own toys. We need to start allocating funds and resources to sustaining ducks. Otherwise, we will have declining duck populations and likely will not have saved the other less common stuff either. Dilution is not the solution. The same goes for CRP. Folks say that we can't keep using incentive payments to save the prairies, but the reality is that CRP came from the minds and hearts of game bird biologists and was meant to save one of the most endangered ecosystems on the planet, the U.S. prairies. But guess what? Yep, it got hijacked too, and now those funds are spent all over the place trying to save every critter and every habitat everywhere, and that dilution is not the solution. It is time to bring CRP back to the prairies and save the ducks. Last, so much of the habitat work we do, like moist soil management, the emergent marsh cycle, green tree reservoirs, and coastal wetland restoration, say for black ducks, it supports an entire suite of species well beyond ducks and other game animals. But the idea is, let's stop doing that and do something for the non-game animals. Our non-game brethren would do well to first determine if the waterfowl management is helping a wide range of species already, which in most cases it is. We've done the science in that. Then, if you have species falling through the cracks, then go find your own funding. Not ours, but go find your own funding to save those remaining species. Also ask your birdwatcher friends if they bought a duck stamp. The answer most commonly is no, but they reap all the benefits while driving along roads on national wildlife refuges and taking pictures and putting their binocs on all kinds of cool critters that's at least partially funded by duck stamps. I've talked to folks, why don't they buy duck stamps? They don't want to support the hunting agenda, but they reap the benefits of all the duck stamps that you and I have provided. Once again, playing in a sandbox with toys they never purchased in the first place. Nor have they even earned those toys in any way differently. RAWA, R-A-W-A, is the Recovering America's Wildlife Act, a proposed U.S. bill that would have provided $1.4 billion annually to states for proactive conservation, for habitat restoration, invasive species control, reintroducing native species, and addressing threatened and endangered species. This is basically like the non-game version of Pittman-Robertson or PR funds. And guess what? The non-game people, a group that largely outnumbers hunters, couldn't get it together once again. The bill passed the House of Representatives in 2022, but failed to pass the Senate before the end of the 117th Congress. So it is dead in the water. Like many before. Why? The constituency that says they love all wildlife and conservation won't step up and get it done like hunters have and continue to do.
Ugh, the sick day struggle is real. But with Dimetapp, it doesn't have to be. Children's Dimetapp works quickly to soothe multiple bothersome cough, cold, and allergy symptoms in a single dose. Our fast-acting formulas are designed with kids in mind, so they get everything they need and nothing they don't. Available in liquid and on-the-go chewable tablets. Tap the banner now to shop at Amazon and say goodbye to the sick day struggle with Dimetapp. Use as directed.
Anyhow, this is not the end of this subject because we need our PR funds back. Our national wildlife refuges and wildlife management areas supported for the ducks, and CRP focused back in the prairies where it belongs. Next up, some corn comment, and then your duck migration forecast. So please, stick with me. The Farmland Group is your one-stop shop for real estate brokerage, consulting, management, lending, and appraisal across Arkansas, Mississippi, Missouri, Louisiana, Georgia, Tennessee, and growing. Contact them today at farmlg.com. Hey, I'm telling you, do not hesitate because these folks are busy buying, selling, and providing consulting and management strategies that build value into your portfolio and your land. So get in the queue today. Get on their radar. Get on their books. Man, y'all won't be disappointed. Contact the Farmland Group today at farmlg.com. That's farmlg.com. And we are back to talk corn once again. But goodness, please remember that yes, ducks eat corn, but so much more. I went out to our local wetlands at dawn last week and collected plants to bring into our ecology and management of wetlands class. Most plants at our latitude are at shatter stage, and it was cool to see students at the lab tables leaning in to see the panic grass, water plantain, barnyard grass, rice cut grass, and burr reed seeds. The burr reed is really the only one you can kind of see easily, about the size of a kernel of corn, but it's just okay duck food because it's a perennial, not an annual grass or anything like that. It doesn't produce a ton of food. Pretty good nutrition, but we had 3 types of millet on the table, and that grain is kind of like jack millet you get in your kind of commercial, like your 17-grain bread. You know, it's large for duck food. We had Walter's millet, barnyard grass, and jungle rice on the table, plus all the tiny seeds, the panic grass, the goosefoot, the pigweed, the crabgrass. Some of you recognize these as bad agricultural weeds, competitors for sure, but they're also things that ducks eat. Sure, they find some corn, but when they are chasing that flood line, they are gobbling up weed seeds. In those emergent marshes, they are hitting the perennials like burr reed, water plantain, arrowhead, and the many carex species or sedges. These plant communities change from north to south, but the reality is that many of the ducks we pursue are small seed specialists. Of course, many have adapted to eat the little package we call corn, but the reality is that most of these ducks sustain in a world created before we even thought about corn. So anyhow, this is the ongoing corn comment, which in my opinion is ridiculous given all the stuff that ducks eat and rely upon across the vast landscape that we call North America. The people crying about flooded corn probably couldn't list half a dozen non-domestic plants that mallards rely upon, and my guess is they couldn't even name 3 bugs that ducks regularly eat without Googling, what do ducks eat? But word on the street is that they are the authority in taking it all to the highest court about flooded corn. Anyhow, okay, to the point here. We had a loyal listener make some really good points. He shot me a message when we stated that waste corn alone could feed the continental duck population 7 times over. The listener noted that not all the corn is in places where ducks will find it. That was the spirit of the comment, at least. For sure. But we didn't split hairs when calculating this kind of corn comment the first time. We basically used all ducks, so that some of them might not even eat corn. So if we restricted to those that eat corn, plus the fact that most of the corn is grown in the upper portions of the central Mississippi Flyway, that corn is still likely feeding a lot of waterfowl many times over, those that actually eat corn many times over. The waste grain in fields alone could likely feed these ducks that eat corn many times over. Let us work on that equation and tighten it up over the next few weeks. But hey, we like the checks and balances on our work, so thanks for bringing that to our attention. We've done it to others, so no reason to not ask us the tough questions as well. If we can answer them, we will. If more work is needed to be done, we'll get it done. The comment remains that a lot of corn is already on the landscape, even without flooded corn. All right, what else? The same listener said that flooded corn really could hold ducks up because of the carbs involved. Got me a bit, but again, if it gets cold and snows, everything freezes like a block, ducks go south. I just don't think southern folks completely understand how much it really, really sucks here in the winter. We have people that come to Jack's Reef Country for a year or two and love it, but then we have a real winter that we love, and they're like, F that, and they're gone. But those winters are decreasingly common, those really cold winters. So what ducks are generally subject to is calmer weather to the north and mid-latitudes without food shortages, at the same time that southern latitudes seem to have less food and more hunting pressure. Also, even if ducks ran out of food in the north and mid-latitudes, why go south? The weather ain't making you do it. So they go east and west up rivers along the freeze and snow line because the only thing they're going to do at the end of this winter period is go back north. So why fly any farther south than needed, as stated previously? It is also simple, my friends across Dunk Country, but maybe I'm the only one speaking the facts. Hey, ducks like corn. They don't like to get shot at, and when it gets effing cold, they go south. They go south to avoid dying, but they only go as far south as necessary. Anyhow, to even think that somehow on this grand continent that flooded corn has anything to do with anything is beyond absurd. Plus, it is legal and part of the capitalistic system. If I had the capacity to own 400 acres right now, I'd rotate corn through 25% of it and produce differing types of moist soil on the other 75%. Hey, send it, my friends. The ducks will love it, and you will send them back strong with plenty of nutrients for making more ducks. You will shoot well, recruit the next generation, and keep the sandbox for duck hunters full of your own toys. Next, your migration forecast for this week. Beckman Game Calls has it dialed in. If you want a duck call that is adjustable to your air pressure and sounds like a duck, this is it. I've blown a ton of different calls in my life, but this one is the real deal. Look, we don't endorse just anything. We are only going to put forward a call that works. The Edison by Chris Beckman of Beckman Game Calls? Yeah, this beauty sounds like a duck. I only know of one published research paper focused on what makes a duck call sound like a duck. Go look me up, and you will see that colleagues and I have the only paper published in scientific literature about what makes a duck call sound like a duck. For sure, Chris Beckman did his homework, and this call sounds like a duck. This guy knows how to make a duck call, period. But don't just take my word for it. Here's the proof. First, a hen recording, and then the Edison in the big woods of Arkansas. Visit them today at BeckmanGameCalls.com. All right, on to your duck migration forecast for the week. Straight up, we will start with bright spots. The WSI algorithm picked up a solid signal spreading from Alaska down through mid-Alberta across to northern Manitoba in a wide band with cold temperature and some areas of snow that should get ducks really moving this week. Those of you waiting on ducks in the upper parts of the Central Flyway in the U.S. should have a new influx of fresh ducks basically right now, this Monday a.m., but it is likely to end by Tuesday night as winds shift back to the south. Snow flies for a bit in Manitoba, but then the weather moderates and migration stalls. So the fresh ducks are for early in the week in the U.S. prairies. I'd expect fresh ducks into the latitude of South Dakota early in the week, specifically a new batch of green wings and widgeon, but most dabbling ducks should also show up other than mallards. Mallards are stubborn. Then late in the week, we expect another movement of early ducks like green wings, widgeon, and shovelers south out of the U.S. prairies. Places like Iowa and southern Wisconsin should pick up these ducks late in the coming week. The early weak weather activity and potential early La Nina signal also will push new birds into the Pacific Northwest, and some will travel a bit farther south, but not much farther south than Washington State. An exception is a late week movement of widgeon and teal predicted out of Washington State, but this will be limited and not likely happen in the best managed habitats where we expect them to sit out the weather, where they've got food, and hang on a bit longer. At best, a mild mallard migration happens in the Pacific and Central Flyways this week. Many of the initial movements have happened, and now we are just waiting on really good cold fronts to move mallards. Moving east into the Mississippi Flyway, we see very few values that suggest any substantial movement. Of course, some ducks way overshoot where they need to stop, and y'all might hear some news about gobs of gadwall in the south already, and there might be a few that some people are seeing, but most are certainly still working their way through the system towards the south, so maybe don't believe the hype out there. Most places in the northern tier are pretty much on pace in the Mississippi Flyway compared to last year, but behind the curve when it comes to the long-term migration, which is typically earlier than is happening this year. Mallards still not on the move pretty much anywhere other than those most northern breeders making the first move. In the Atlantic Flyway, the biggest note is the drought, and even though we don't see anything in the WSI that predicts migration, pressure can make ducks look for greener grass. So expect a swift movement of ducks out of the northeast U.S. if conditions continue as dry, and guns keep blazing on the few available wetlands. We opened this week with BBD in the title, which typically means big buck down on social media, but we are flipping it on its head as Best Bacon Days. You heard me, Best Bacon Days on the FowlWeather Podcast, which basically means the day you probably shouldn't hunt unless all you want to do is eat bacon in the blind. Best Bacon Days. We also are flirting with midweek Waterfowl Wednesdays that give updates on any major changes to migration forecasts that seem to happen because of weather changes that sometimes happen faster than we like. So, less Best Bacon Days and more days of field spent shooting ducks hot from the north is what we're aiming for. Anyhow, stay tuned. This week, the Best Bacon Day is Tuesday across the country. Mostly south winds in the west and mild conditions in the east. Plus, many openers will have ducks hiding in little corners, and they will be stale. All right, go ahead and check out also Little Peace Gallery, our photographer of the year. That's Little, the word Little, Peace, Peace, Gallery, Little Peace Gallery. That is our photographer of the year. Honestly, go check this out. Click on the upper left on shop and scroll down to that shoveler photo. It is amazing. Grab that for a Christmas gift, the office or camp photo today at littlepeacegallery.com. Last, the Bills' comment about the Patriots game did not age well last week. It was a rough one for us, but Josh Allen is still a beast, so go Bills. My friends, it is always a pleasure to be with you in this grand adventure of duck hunting and duck hunting culture. I said it last week, I'll say it again. There is no better time of year. Get out there, enjoy the marsh, and see more sunrises than the year before. Above all, enjoy life in the wilds of duck country, be good to your neighbors, and do good work. You will not regret it. Thanks for listening, and as always, may your skies be filled and shoot straight, my friends.